Hi, I'm Shlomi Ron, CEO at the Visual Storytelling Institute. We are based in sunny Miami, Florida, and we help business leaders like you with the shortest ways to cut through the clutter and rise above the communication noise through the power of storytelling and the impact of visual media. So if you guys are just joining our podcast for the first time, this is your really great place to be for visual storytelling. And Visual Storytelling Today podcast is a podcast where we bring some of the most notable visual storytelling experts out there. And today we have a special topic. The topic I chose for today is really how to manage visual stories at scale. Why, you might ask, is we all really live in a world of visual communications, and really the reason for that is the adoption of rich bandwidth, social media and mobile, the pipelines. And as a result, we see that according to latest stats, 91% of people like visual content over written content. And in response, we see that marketers on a regular basis use visuals in more than 90% of their content. And this chunk of marketers that use over 90% of their content with visuals are growing 20% year over year. So we see tremendous growth for visual content. That's why I wanted to kind of talk today about really this new brave world of visual content and management platforms that could manage this massive amount of data and personalize it and really distribute it effectively on different platforms and really make an impact for a new generation of marketers that really specialize in visual content. So for this show today, I'm so excited to bring Sanjay Sarathy. He's CMO at Cloudinary. It's a market leader in cloud-based image and video management platform to discuss how to, again, manage visual stories at scale in today's visual communication landscape. A bit about Sanjay. He's a business executive with deep experience in SaaS and software markets and keen insight into big data, analytics, e-commerce, and middleware. Before Cloudinary, he held CMO positions at Imanis Data and Sumo Logic. So if you're an avid WordPress user, you must have used some of their plugins like I have. Wow, this is quite a journey. Welcome to the show, Sanjay.
Thank you very much, Shlomi.
Excellent. So there's so much I want to ask you, but before we dive right in, I'd like to get a little bit about your backstory, your journey, how you got started in marketing in the first place.
Sure. Actually, my story into marketing was one of chance, not necessarily deep planning. A classmate of mine from school, back when the internet was first getting started and first taking hold in business circles, called me and said, "Sanjay, we're looking for people to help us with our software startup. And I thought you might be interesting." And at that time, I was in the management consulting world, so in a very different world than marketing. But I responded to her note and dropped in to visit the CEO of the company, and I just fell in love. I fell in love with the pace of technology change. When I started to get into marketing, I love the fact that it's a combination of art and science. You have to measure things, but you also have to understand how things might work and how things might impact people without necessarily always having to measure that. And in our world in software, you get to have work with varied audiences. You can work with other marketers, you can work with developers, you can work with IT DevOps professionals, finance professionals, depending on what software. So you're always having to think on your feet around how what you're providing is of value to that particular audience. So that's sort of my backstory into marketing, and I've just never left it since I first joined.
Yeah, no, I just looked at your LinkedIn profile before the show, and it's quite amazing, the wide range of CMO positions and companies in different industries. So it's quite a remarkable track record, which is great. So one of the things that I also would like to start, it's a kind of a standing question I have for all my guests is, as you know, visual storytelling is quite new in the business context. Originally, it's coming from the entertainment arts, you know, the way Hollywood was used to make movies. And what happens in past years is that with the decline of the effectiveness of paid media, you know, ad blockers and, you know, banner blindness and others, marketers started looking at new ways to engage audiences, and they start looking deeper in how, you know, Hollywood was engaging through movies, and that's where storytelling is the core component. So I'm kind of wondering, since you are leading the customer voice in a visual content media platform, how do you see, what is your definition for visual storytelling?
It's a great question. From my perspective, where I sit here at Cloudinary, and when we talk with our customers, I think the verb you used around engage or engagement is absolutely critical. And that can mean different things for different types of companies. For e-commerce companies, engagement can be how somebody reacts to their product display, a product listing page, and ultimately maybe converts into a transaction.
Right.
For a media company, it's about how long people read the content and look at the visuals associated with that content. For a travel company that might rely on user-generated content, it's about engaging with the brand. So the word around engagement for us is critical to defining how visual storytelling is successful or not.
Yep.
And I think it's leveraging the power of rich media, whether it's images or videos or 3D or AR and VR and in certain areas to create that engagement. And so we believe strongly that the visual media is at the heart of that storytelling, and we see it every day with customers and the stories that they come to us with in terms of what they're trying to tell.
I see. But do you find that these clients are actually using visual content, or I should rephrase this, use stories in the visual content they produce in the classic 3 acts story structure, you know, setting, conflict, resolution, or it's more broader than that?
I think it's broader than that. Not everybody has a 3-act story. Sometimes it's a very short story sometimes, and it's a quick 1-act play,
Right.
rather than a full-on drama. But the premise around engaging with them visually at the get-go, and then taking them down a journey, down a path that makes sense for that user or that viewer or for that customer, is part of their storytelling effort. And I think that's true whether you are a company focused on the end consumer, or even if you are a brand agency trying to work with other consultants and or other businesses, right? At the end of the day, you're trying to tell a story around what value you're providing for the service you offer.
Got it. So that brings us to, I'm sure my audience is now interested in, now that we have your background and a little bit about your perspective about visual storytelling, maybe you can tell us a little bit about what Cloudinary is all about and what are the core problems it's really solving for your clients.
Sure. Before I start with the what, talk a little bit about the why. Two-thirds of the web today is made up of images, right? And that has grown by something like 10% over the last 4 years. And I think we all intuitively understand it when we go online. But when you add video to that, that percentage is even higher. So the premise has been that companies of all types are using images and videos and other forms of media to help with sort of the visual storytelling. And the reality is we live in a visual economy today.
Yep.
So what Cloudinary realized was that it's one thing if you have just a few images, 5 or 10 or 15, you can manage them, you can handle them, you can crop them, you can add watermarks to them by hand. But when you're a large brand, no matter what vertical market you play in, and you're handling tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or potentially even millions of images, you have to be able to handle that at scale. You can't just say I'm going to do this from 3 to 5 p.m. on Thursday afternoon. So what we have built is a software platform that helps companies manage all their digital visual media assets at scale.
Mhm.
And uh, so everything from uploading them, transforming them into the size, into the shape, adding watermarks, rotating them, and then dynamically delivering them to your end users no matter where in the world they may live, whether it's on a mobile device, whether it's on their desktop, whether it's some other type of device, and doing that in an automated way. So we're and supporting all the engagement goals that our customers have. And so we started off 7 years ago, and today we have over 5,500 customers around the world, and over 500,000 people using the platform in one way, shape,
Oh,
or form.
wow. And who are the major competitors in this space that you are up against?
So it actually kind of varies. A lot of times people do it themselves. We will run into do-it-yourselves. There are plenty of open source tools out there that you can work with, but you have to manage that. You have to essentially deal with that. And a huge part of our value add is the productivity we give back to the organizations in terms of time saved, so you can focus on your real work and your real mission. There are certainly competitors in each of the segments we play in, so different competitors, whether it's Adobe in digital asset management or Akamai in the image management space. But one of the areas, and I think competition is great. It's great. It forces us to constantly innovate and bring new capabilities to the fore. But I think one of the unique aspects of what we provide is the ability to handle all these different types of media, whether it's images or videos, or providing a full-blown digital asset management system at scale that very few others do.
Yeah. So it looks like you handle really like the storage aspect, but you also involved in the distribution. So basically placing those images on different owned, paid, and earned media.
Yeah, it's absolutely sort of the full end-to-end process. So storage and management is just one aspect of it. It's relatively straightforward,
Yeah.
but I think where the real power shines is taking those images and videos and creating hotspots on videos or video previews automatically using AI and deep learning, or adding overlays or watermarks or personalizing images so that if, for example, if the number of shoes falls below a certain number, you can put running out of stock, right? Or and automatically badged on those visual items. So our ability to transform and manipulate those images to support the visual story that you want to tell
Yeah.
is, and to be able to do it automatically and at scale is something that that distinguishes us from others in the marketplace.
I see. So if I'm a potential client, what is the typical process would be for me to use your service? And you can pick any particular solution that you offer as an example.
Yeah, I mean, so it can come across in one of a couple of different ways.
Mhm.
Part of our mission has always been to make Cloudinary accessible to anybody, right? So if you're a two-person agency, you can use our product for free, right? You can sign up for a free account on cloudinary.com. You can start playing with it. You can start ingesting either your assets or your client's assets into it. And it's not a trial, it's a free product. And then we scale all the way up to a company like, somebody like a StubHub, the ticketing agency, right? And they use us for multiple use cases, but they handle hundreds of thousands of assets that they use through Cloudinary and handle it at scale and use us for a full-blown digital asset management system. So our approach has been to support both the small, medium business that can, in some ways, be self-service or provide a more full-blown, full-featured service to larger companies that want all the capabilities of Cloudinary, as well as all the bandwidth and all the transformation they'd like to use for their needs as well.
Is it accurate to assume that on the distribution side, you mostly specialize on the own media, people's websites and own presence versus as a ad serving, as a paid media extension, or as a publishing platform like a Hootsuite on social media?
Well, we can actually support both. So funnily enough, one of the biggest segments in our customer base are ad tech companies. So we're not necessarily delivering the ads themselves. That's obviously what the ad tech companies do. But what we are doing is providing the underlying infrastructure to define essentially the size, the shape, the delivery of those assets to the various publishing platforms that the ad tech companies work with. And so we support both own and paid media mechanisms. It's from our perspective, the mechanics of what we do to support both are in a lot of ways the same. And the nice thing is, for a marketer, for example, one of the really interesting aspects of using the Cloudinary platform is for every master image or master asset that comes in, you can create a wide variety of presets. So you can create a set of images that are purely for your social media campaigns, one for that meet the dimensions for your website, one that meet the dimensions for your email campaign. And these can be automatically generated. So as a marketer, you're not trying to think, okay, I need 18 different versions of this one asset. How do I do that? With Cloudinary, we can do that at scale, and you're focused on what assets do I actually want to build or shoot, and then Cloudinary will take care of the rest.
That's incredible. You mentioned earlier that your platform is using AI, machine learning, deep learning. I'm kind of curious how this automation is expressed in the distribution side, when you pushing content to own, paid, and earned. Especially, you mentioned recently, that you work with the other partners like ad techs and maybe social media publishers. Then is the intelligence, the personalization for serving these visual assets is embedded in the delivery, or you just deliver the content?
No, it's embedded in the delivery. So, and it comes about through a few different ways. Some of the things that we do through our algorithms associated with AI and deep learning could be something as straightforward as, how do we take content and automatically focus on the most relevant object in that image, right? So if you have a particular dimension, but you don't want to crop it in a particular way that might lose the central focus, we have algorithms that, for example, can focus on the face or focus on the most relevant aspects of the subject. Or you can define, if you're in a dining room setting and you want to focus on the food, you can define that. So there are mechanisms that we provide built into the platform that allow you to focus on the right areas of the image or the video that ultimately get delivered to the end user, whether it's through a mobile device or through a desktop or some other device. And that's part of the power. We don't always know how it's going to get consumed, but we want to be in a position to shape that when it gets consumed by these various devices, it automatically gets delivered in the best resolution, in the best format, in the best contextual viewing for that particular device, in that particular geo. And that's something that we automate on our end.
That's interesting because, again, I'm thinking out loud here because I never actually looked at the under the hood of your technology, obviously,
Right.
but in terms of the AI aspect, I would assume that there are certain data sets or variables that you can define. You mentioned the face example. I would consider this maybe a custom data point. Other are more universal, like previous user behavior on your website. Clicks, conversions. These are all tangible footprints that people are actually leaving when they interact with your content, both on social media and your own media website. So these I consider like universal data points that could really help personalize a distribution of a visual asset. But I'm sure there are also custom data points that are specific for a specific client that based on their business.
No, absolutely. In fact, we have a set of amazing deep learning experts in our CTO office who essentially do a lot of that. How do we take data sets related to the companies we serve and learn from that, right? So because as a SaaS platform, we have these data sets, and so we can continue to, the corpus is something that we can continue to work with and learn from and understand where there may be outliers that we need to sort of build into the deep learning framework. And I don't claim to understand all the different aspects of our deep learning algorithms, but what I will say is that we're constantly figuring out how to take the various data sets at our disposal, whether public or otherwise, to use as part of the value add that the deep learning provide.
Yeah, one of the trends right now in the CRM world that I'm sure you probably came across is the next best action. And with customers, basically the idea of the way I kind of describe it to people is that we try to emulate, the old days general store keeper that knew each customer individually and basically serve them personally. Bring that to the world of technology today, where every interaction with your customer, you want to give them something specific to what they ask, and not kind of move away from the world of obviously spray and pray, or the next level, which was more kind of segmenting people into buckets based on some one or two variables. So now it's really treating people as individuals. Do you adopt that philosophy at Cloudinary?
Sure, and I think it's we're essentially part of an overall ecosystem that we work with. So we work with CRM systems, we work with product information management systems, and so as the data we hold is not necessarily personalized data per se, it's the image data, but because we can integrate with all these other systems that might have those data points, people that use our platform can easily create rules that associate specific images or specific content with either specific product types or specific user profiles or specific user groups to do personalization like that. And obviously, the company in question, our customer, would define what they would want to do in that regard. So we don't typically hold PII data of anybody. That's held typically in a separate system. But certainly there's no reason why our customers can't correlate assets with specific user journeys through the website.
And I'm just throwing another, hot trend right now, but I'm kind of curious, since Google kind of started, this mechanism that allows you to search a visual content not by their label but by their image statistics.
Mm-hmm.
Ability to really pull images based on the actual make versus what labels you attach to them, text-based. Do you see that in your space?
Yeah, we're certainly seeing that. I mean, metadata at multiple levels is critical for searching, for tagging,
Right.
and so the whole notion of metadata, whether it's built into the image itself or whether it's user added, is something that we support from the get-go. Because again, back to our original point around doing this at scale, it's one thing if you have 10 or 20 assets that you can quickly scan through and pick the ones that you need. But when you're talking millions of images and you're doing searches to support a particular, I need a blue sofa for a particular campaign, metadata is at the heart of how you do it, and that metadata can be driven by both predefined or user-generated actions, if you will.
That makes sense. So speaking about the actual content, who makes the content? Obviously, one source is the client. They're graphic designers, either inside or outside the business. But do you also have any collaborations with the image databases, like they and all the big ones?
You mean like Shutterstock and Getty and folks like that?
Exactly. For clients that might not, that looking for like a faster solution that can easily manipulated and customized.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's funny, both we're actually building a native integration into one of the services I just mentioned, which should be released shortly, and in conversations with the other one that we're talking to. So absolutely, because people do have the need to both pull from, assets that they create on their own, plus libraries that they may have from third parties, and that's absolutely something that we in fact already support today, and will continue to support in a big way.
Yeah. So been with Cloudinary for a while now. What would you say is like the most heavily misconceptions about cloud-based visual asset platforms that you come across?
I think one of the things that I always enjoyed as a marketer. One of the things I do is take screenshots of social media tweets from our customers that are amazed at how easy and how rapid and how impactful it's been. And I think I think people don't realize that there are solutions out there that can solve problems they've been banging their heads against the wall for years to solve. And I think whether you're a developer or a marketer or a UI UX expert, solutions like Cloudinary exist out there and can solve a lot of the use cases that are in the marketplace. And we're always coming across new ones that we need to have answers for. But I think the realization, the misconception is that you have to put up with slow performing, and you don't, you have to use, you don't have the ability to manipulate the images and videos and other assets in the way you want them to is a misconception that we offset very quickly, because when people see our first demo, they go, "Oh wow, I didn't realize we could do that," and that to me is sort of the greatest satisfaction, because I hadn't even thought about it.
Exactly, because on the low end, I would think, a small business might think, why can I use like a Google Drive for my visual assets, maybe manipulate them manually using some,
No, absolutely, and it's done. It's done
yeah,
all over the world, right? And
how can you bring them to, think the next level up, what's possible?
Exactly, and showcasing the the notion of what's possible is a huge part of what we try and do with anybody that's interested in this type of solution, and that's, I think, part of the experience that we try and provide our customers.
Yeah. So thinking about the what's possible, how would you say, how success looks like for your clients? Just take a few examples maybe to paint this picture of a, you know, life after working with you guys.
Sure. Um, in fact, I mentioned this client before, but they published a story on Medium just a couple of weeks ago, or actually last week, and I thought it was an amazing story. It's StubHub, and one of the interesting things about StubHub is they're putting on events around entertainment, concerts, sporting events, and imagery is a huge part of how those events are showcased on their website. And one of the challenges they had was people were viewing the StubHub site across a variety of different devices, desktop, and sometimes an image delivered through the desktop, which looked great, and but would be cropped in a very unusual, funny fashion on a mobile device, and you got a horrible experience from that. So they chose Cloudinary to basically essentially automate that whole process of how those assets were managed, transformed, delivered across the world for them, no matter who was viewing their website. But the other part that they really found valuable was they were able to use Cloudinary to bring their various teams together. So their brand teams, their creative teams, their marketing teams, the developer teams, together in one platform to work with. So one of, I think, the unique aspects of Cloudinary is we support different audiences very easily. We provide marketers and creative types with our digital asset management solution. We provide developers with an API-based platform that they can use their favorite language or SDKs with, and it's all one technology base. So we're not sitting there having to tell people, oh, you have to use this platform for this and this platform for you as a developer. It's essentially one single platform that's approachable to different audiences because of the different ways in which you can interact with it. And that's something that StubHub found incredibly useful. Another customer that's really interesting is Apartment Therapy, that has a number of different sites. But what they found really useful is for their editors, right, who are editing the websites, their web editors, to essentially use Cloudinary as the basis for building and delivering assets to their various sites in the way they wanted to support the story they wanted to support.
Right.
And again, that sort of flexibility that we give to a company like that at the scale at which they operate was something that they found very, very powerful. So I think the ability to support any company that uses imagery as a way to engage with their customers, somebody we can help and we can work with, whether you're small or extremely large. And I think that's one of the aspects that people appreciate, is we can help them grow as their needs and their visual storytelling requirements grow.
And does your platform has any reporting or measurement or this is done on a separate side?
No, it's done off the same platform. So we provide a number of reporting capabilities around the assets, around access points. So there are a number of different ways in which you can sort of see reports around how often your assets are viewed, the bandwidth you're consuming, where your assets are being delivered, the end user browser types that are essentially interacting with those assets. So all those data points and reports are accessible to you, whether it's through our own reporting-based infrastructure, or you can access everything through our API and use it in your own analytics system as well.
Got it. Are there any kind of hero KPIs that most clients use that basically test the health of their visual assets. Because I checked the website before the show, and I looked at some of the testimonials from your customers, and saw that a bunch of them talk about bandwidth reduction.
Sure. So there are a set of KPIs typically around performance, right? Performance of your website or your application, whether that's related to reducing the amount of bandwidth because we have automatically compressed images without any visual degradation of those images or videos, which is very powerful, right? And there are other metrics around conversion, right? What are the conversion rates? And conversion can mean everything from paying to moving to the next step or to an action that the customer has. So that's a second set of KPIs. The third set of KPIs around engagement, right? The notion of how long are people spending on your site, reading material, interacting, asking questions if that's part of your site. So there are a variety of different KPIs depending on the type of business you have. And then the fourth one, which is again significant, is around internal productivity. So you may be spending, instead of spending 3 person months a year working on this infrastructure, you spend 1 person week per year on this infrastructure because you're now using Cloudinary, and you've got the rest of the 2 months and 3 weeks doing things that actually drive the business forward in ways that you weren't able to do before. So those are the 4, I would say, buckets of metrics typically our customers sort of look at for their own success.
That ties to the most common business objectives is brand awareness and maybe driving sales for e-commerce clients.
Yeah, it's a lot of it is driving the brand, driving top line growth, improving internal productivity, right? And I think in a very simplistic way, if you look at software as either you're helping companies make more money or save operating expenses at the end of the day, why we operate, a huge part of what we do is around helping companies make more money, whether it's part of the digital transformation initiatives, they want to be a bigger part of the visual economy, whatever that initiative might be. Where from a media perspective, we're at the centerpiece of that visual storytelling initiative.
That's great. So we almost at the end of our show, but I have 2 more questions for you. First is, where do you see the future of visual storytelling headed, especially in the context of visual asset platforms?
I think the next big trend, I mean, it's starting to pick up, is around video. I think people have had sometimes understandable fears around video because of the expense associated with it and the time associated with it, and there's complexity because you have codecs and you have bit rates. But I think what's happening is increasingly, whether it's from Cloudinary or otherwise, the ability to handle and reduce the complexity and pain with delivering video is such that they can then focus on, hey, what additional value do we get engagement? Because there are plenty of statistics to show the incremental value of a video to, even if it's a short form video for a few seconds, to building user engagement. So I think what we're going to see is greater and greater use of video in different aspects, but again, augmenting the notion of visual storytelling, and obviously we all, we're all.
You mean augmented reality or?
No. So augmenting what's already happening with images, right? In a big way. And I think people, as they get more comfortable with the notion of handling and distributing videos at scale, I think that's going to be a bigger part. I think your point around AR and VR, I think is going to be very interesting. It's still very niche today, is our opinion. But I do think in certain areas that's going to have a bigger impact.
Mhm.
Obviously we know about it in the gaming world and certain entertainment worlds. I think it'll be interesting to see whether it it takes on a more mainstream appeal. But I certainly think video is one of those things that we see.
Yeah.
Certainly, questions coming in from both our existing clients and new prospects asking how to think about it and how to incorporate it into their existing infrastructure.
But with more accessible visual formats today, do you have any information about activity around maybe personalizing an infographic, which is in essence it's an image, but
Yep.
the ability to customize it based on your type of audience? Or, for example, on the video side, how can you personalize a 360 video? So these are two tweaks on image and video, but with a little bit of a
Yeah, no, we support 360 video out of the box with Cloudinary, right? So you essentially all the concepts around personalization that we've talked about for images are equally applicable to video as well. And so the premise that you uh, that you can't do personalization in video is not exactly true. I think you have to think a little more about how that personalization is going to be relevant to your users, because they consume so much bandwidth and there is an impact on page performance. You have to think through that a little bit and weigh that trade-off.
also you browse it,
Yeah,
browse sequentially, right?
yeah, or you can lazy load, right? You can do things like lazy loading and ensure, or sometimes you may want to do video previews, right? And again, that's another way where we talked about AI.
Yeah.
How do you pick the relevant 10-second snippet in a 2-minute video? And again, we provide that capability to support video previews as well. So there are a lot of ways to sort of personalized based both on AI or also based on what you explicitly want to do
Mhm.
into that notion. Infographics, somewhat driven by how you um, build that infographic, obviously,
Mhm.
but certainly we we can support the creation of those, or I shouldn't say creation because you create it offline typically, but support the ability to add and layer on to the infographic with different effects, etc., that we can deliver.
Yeah, because I would think
Uh,
that if you treat an infographic as a standalone tiles, and you have two
right.
buyer personas, basically you can actually serve different tiles based on the persona. So,
Correct.
yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you have the ability, depending on how you want to slice and dice that infographic and how it's built, and you can layer if it's built in Adobe Creative, an Adobe Creative Suite product. You can remove layers of the PSD with which you created that infographic and uh, add your own customizations depending on how you want to deliver it. So it's fascinating. The notion is there are really unlimited possibilities to
Yeah.
deliver sort of these variations and unlimited manipulations that are possible. And really what limits you is less the technology and more the use cases that are relevant for you. Um,
No,
typically we find that uh, to be the limiting factor.
no, that's really a fascinating world. I was struck by your capability to create custom URLs that actually work as a replacement for a photo manipulation, which is quite incredible at the URL level.
Yeah. The way we manipulate URLs as an expression of our API,
Yeah.
and it's great for something like, again, back to your marketing audience. It's great for SEO purposes, right? So you can take that image and deliberately change it to a specific, make sure it doesn't have a weird sort of image name at the end, you can deliberately ensure that it has SEO relevant titles to support your SEO goals. And again, that's another part of what
Amazing. Yeah.
we can support through the Cloudinary platform.
That's awesome. So I'd like to close with another standing question I have for all my guests. If you need to give your top 3 tips for marketers, maybe considering entering or getting into visual content platforms, what would you say?
So I think tip number 1 is really think about what you're trying to do with your visual assets. What's the end goal? What's the KPI you're trying to achieve with those assets? Is it engagement? Is it conversion? Is it so that's 1. B, think about the trade-off between how much time your either development, engineering, or marketing teams are spending on doing it yourselves, and understand the trade-off between that and the productivity they get. And then the third piece is obviously a shameless plug, but it's not just solutions like us. We do believe there are options out there for marketers and developers and creative professionals to really unleash the possibilities around their visual assets, and we think you'll be pleasantly surprised at what you can do with solutions like Cloudinary.
Awesome. All right. I'd like to thank you so much, Sanjay, for this fascinating chat today. And for our audience, if they want to, what is the best way to contact you?
They can come to our website, cloudinary.com, CLOUDINARY.com, and there's a contact us button there. Feel free to get in touch with us that way, or they can send us an email at info@cloudinary.com, and it'll come to us, and we'll be happy to answer any and all questions that come our way.
Awesome. Thank you so much again, Sanjay. And for all of you watching or listening to this podcast, I hope to see you in our next episode. So until next time, take care of your stories. Thank you.